Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Prachadine Nirvishesha Sanyavani Paschatya Desatadine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This morning we will begin Canto 10, Chapter 6, text number 1, the Krishna's killing of Putana. Could you remind me, because I was trying to remember this morning, the etymology of Putana, of the two, the first one?
No virtue.
Putana, no virtue.
Put means virtue and na means virtue. And it's purifying.
Okay, no virtue. So I was also thinking further about a question that came yesterday evening. You know, the cause of Krishna's causeless mercy upon Putana. One answer that I want to add to what I responded yesterday, so it's a nice meditation. She who has no virtue, Krishna wants to deliver, and he doesn't need a cause. Because he's causelessly merciful. Well, okay, he's causelessly merciful, then why is he not equally causelessly merciful to everyone, and everyone gets delivered? Because do we have to get to the position we have no virtue? And then we're eligible to get Krishna's mercy? That's not logical. It's just his nature. And if he simply glances upon someone, then his glance is purifying. We'll hear as we go along how he purified Putana, although she had no virtue. And her poison became not poison, and so forth. We heard at least one possible cause of his causeless mercy towards her. In her previous life, she was the daughter or the sister of Bali Maharaj, a pure devotee very dear to Krishna. And Vamana, recognizing her desire to be mother, he allowed her to be mother, and so by his mercy, Krishna's mercy, he wanted to reciprocate with that motherly regard. No, she wasn't a sadhaka, Bali Maharaj's sister or daughter, but a natural affection arose in her. Slight, but a natural affection, and Krishna reciprocates with such natural affection. We're going to hear, I was thinking further, in Nectar Devotion we hear one of the qualities of Krishna. He has 64 outstanding qualities and unlimited qualities. One of them is he simultaneously achieves many things by one thing. So we can't just narrow it down to one thing. Krishna's pastimes, in fact, are unlimited So what's the limit of that which is unlimited? So some of the other considerations we'll hear as we go along. In the unfolding of Krishna's pastimes, Lord Brahma says in chapter 14 of Canto 10 that although he's the Supreme Lord, the Lord of all beings, and the source of all creation, yet he appears in this world as if a human being for a purpose, and that is to stimulate the ecstatic love, to reciprocate with the ecstatic love of the residents of Vrindavan. So part of this Putana pastime and his calling by his internal potency or Lila Shakti or Yogamaya potency, he calls her because it's part of the stimulation of the ecstatic love of the residents of Vrindavan. Our acharyas describe that Krishna's killing of demons is incidental. Now, the focus is upon Putana and her being killed and being delivered. But our acharyas say that's incidental. What's primary and not incidental is the stimulation of the ecstatic love of the residents of Vrindavan. There are different categories of Krishna's pastimes. One of those is his Nitya Lila, and another is his Naimatika Lila, or that's a phrase used by Bhakti Vinod Thakur, occasional pastimes. This is one of those. The killing of demons is in that category. And we'll hear at the end, the final section, there's a message for us, a lesson for us in the form of protection that the Supreme Personality of Godhead provides to his devotees, the sadhakas, that's us. So there's multiple things, we'll hear as we go further, there's multiple things that Krishna is accomplishing because that's one of his qualities. With one thing, he's accomplishing many things. And he does so through his various potencies, and we'll hear. And this Lila be examined under high magnification lens by our acharyas. What's going on here? He's loving. Love doesn't need a cause. He wants to deliver her, and he does. Because, once more, in a previous life, she had a genuine affection as a mother towards a child. It's light. But just see, he reciprocates with something even so slight. Therefore, Brahma says, if you deliver Putana, how are you going to reciprocate? By what are you going to do with the residents of Vrindavan that give you everything? Their hearts, their minds, their possessions, their families, their homes, their very life. How are you going to reciprocate with them? In one line, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur responds, he cannot. That is, he's controlled by their love. He gives himself. That's the nature of the Supreme Lord. He gives himself. And he gives himself in very wonderful ways, and that's revealed in this pastime. So that's a little meditation on why, what was the cause of Krishna giving special mercy to Putana, calling her and delivering her. Now, before we begin the first verse, I requested a 9-year-old girl because she said that her favorite pastime of Krishna is the Putana pastime. So I requested her, please compose a poem, and I'm going to read Nina Singh's poem. Putana entered Goloka without permission, with an impossible wicked mission. Disguising herself as a heavenly lady, her plan to kill baby Krishna was very shady. Seeing Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj's house, the evil spirit entered as quietly as a little mouse. That this child killer, with capital letters, child killer, had smeared a very powerful poison on her breast. Hoping to kill Krishna, she put him on her chest. She took him on her lap, not feeling sorry at all, to kill baby Krishna, who she wrapped in her shawl. Lord Krishna, on the other hand, knew what Putana wanted. He closed his eyes, and he was undaunted. Krishna sucked her milk as her life air. She screamed in pain and ran here and there. Then Putana fell and was finally dead. The land of Vrindavan was her deathbed. So those of you that are not familiar with the Putana Lila, now you know the Putana Lila. And those of you that appreciate 9-year-olds expressing themselves in appreciation of Krishna's pastimes will relish her refined little expression of appreciation of Krishna's pastime. So here's the first verse. Because there's many verses, I'm not going to go through all the Sanskrit, but you see in colored letters certain words highlighted. Na mrsha is the Sanskrit. Na mrsha iti. Na mrsha iti is, it could not be false or useless. I'll read the translation. Shukadeva Goswami continued, my dear king, he's speaking to Shukadev, to Maharaj Parikshit, the king. While Nanda Maharaj was on the way home, he considered that what Vasudeva had said could not be false or useless. That's na mrisha. Na mrisha. Just a reminder, Vasudeva, according to the Bhagavatam, didn't give any details. He just said, I have a sense that there will be dangers in Gokula. You should return quickly. And because Vasudeva was known to be truthful, an ideal, virtuous personality who only spoke the truth, that whatever it was, he didn't ask him what it was, but whatever it was that was at risk, he had to get back quickly. It could not be false or useless. Anukundunduvi cannot say something false. There must have been some danger of disturbances in Gokula. And that's this word vichintayan. Vichintayan. Danger, disturbances in Gokula. So this is his mind. As Nanda Maharaj thought about the danger for his beautiful son, Krishna, he was afraid. And he took shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Controller. Hari Jagama Sharanam. Harim Jagama Sharanam. We're going to touch on this also as we go further this morning. So for the time being, we're going to focus on this word, Shankitaha. He was afraid. Now, something that we all hear in the Hare Krishna movement is this world that we live in is a place of anxiety. And kind of the carrot is to go to the place where there's no anxiety, called Vaikuntha, no anxiety. But here we have anxiety and fear. And that's not supposed to happen in the spiritual world. Why? What? Anxiety in Goloka. So here's a very nice explanation of that by Jiva Goswami in Krishna Sandarbha. Quoting, "The residents of Vrindavan are eternally dear to Lord Krishna, and they are perfectly situated in the highest platform of spiritual happiness, free from all contact of the material energy." So if you're free from all contact of material energy, then there shouldn't be any fear or anxiety. He then makes reference to this verse, Canto 10, Chapter 11, where Shukadev Goswami says, "In this way, all the cowherd men, headed by Nanda Maharaj, enjoyed topics about the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram with great transcendental pleasure, and they could not even perceive material tribulations." So that sounds like a contradiction, because it was just said that he was fearful and in anxiety, but they could not even perceive material tribulations, and rather they're on the platform of spiritual happiness, free from all contact of the material energy. So it sounds like a contradiction. And the resolution of this contradiction is very simple. We can say, well, his anxiety or his fear was a transcendental anxiety, transcendental fear, not like the ones that we know. But taking that understanding, which is correct, and going a little bit further, we find in Chaitanya Charitamrita and other places, there are 33 vyabhichari bhavas that those in the spiritual world experience. Radharani experiences all of them, and some different rasas, they experience some of them. And particularly prominent in parental affection is chinta, a vyabhichari bhav. It's a symptom, this anxiety that Nanda Maharaj was experiencing was an ecstasy, just a little dabbling with the picture of nectar devotion or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. There's, Rupa Goswami reveals that the spiritual world is an ocean, a Sindhu, of prema rasa. And prema has different subparts. And those subparts include sthayi bhava, that's the steady ecstasy. In the case of parental affection, it's the regard of parents towards children. That's a particular type of love, or bhava, sthayi bhava, parental affection. And that parental affection is stimulated by the rising and falling of different stimulants. And one of them, for a parent, is danger for their child. So that vyabhichari bhav of danger for my child, chinta, that's a vyabhichari bhav. So when bhavas, prema is a mixture of different bhavas, just like in the ocean. Picture in your mind the ocean. And there's some really big waves, And there's some small waves, and there's some medium waves, and some big waves stay high for a long time, and then they subside. Some come and go very quickly, and they're waves mixing with other waves within the ocean. That's what the ocean does. So the ocean of Prema Rasa does the same, only there's names for the different types of rasas, and there's subcategories of those types of rasas. In short, Nanda Maharaj is experiencing an ecstasy, and Krishna is stimulating the ecstasy. Not that the parental affection is lost. The parental affection is enhanced with a particular mood of bhava or ecstasy by worrying about his son. Let's go the other direction. Supposing you're a Mayavadi, or supposing you meet somebody that's a Mayavadi. They say, no, you can't have... See, he's worldly. He's got anxiety. So don't give me this transcendental talk. Then Nanda should be a Mayavadi. He has no feeling. What's a parent that he would be criticized if he had no feeling? Whatever happens, happens. My son can be in danger, no problem. I can be happy, no problem. Because I'm fixed in oneness. But that's not the nature of bhakti. It's not fixed in... The oneness is the happiness of the Supreme Lord. And within that happiness of the Supreme Lord, there is rasa. Prema rasa. And there's different bhavas within that ocean of rasa. Parental affection includes not material, but a spiritual anxiety or a spiritual ecstasy. And that lesson can be understood in many, many different ways. But I'm going to move on so we can complete this morning class. But pastimes of the Supreme Lord, in all cases, there's rasa. And he's exchanging with his devotees, and is especially sweet. Here's Lord Brahma speaking to Krishna. My dear master, although you have nothing to do with material existence, you come to this earth and imitate material life just to expand the varieties of ecstatic enjoyment for your surrendered devotees. So this is the verse I was referring to at the very beginning. Krishna's summoning Putana for the purpose of expanding varieties of ecstatic enjoyment for the eternal residents of Vrindavan. Particular focus goes to Nanda and Jasoda, but all the residents of Vrindavan have their ecstatic love, enjoyment for Krishna expanded by this pastime. In his purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, the purport to this first verse, whenever there is danger, the pure devotees think of the protection and shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is what Nanda did. He took shelter of Hari. In Nanda Maharaj's household, he had a deity, and the deity, principal deity for Nanda and Jasoda, was Narayana, or Hari. So naturally he took shelter of his deity, or his presiding Lord, because this is what devotees do, and he's a pure devotee. He's a pure devotee. And he's taking shelter of the personality of God. A sense of danger, even in the spiritual world, sense of danger. And what does one do? Take shelter of Hari. Prabhupada goes on, explaining from Bhagavad Gita, there's the material world where anityam asukham lokam. That's this world. It's anityam, it's not nityam, it's temporary. And sukham, miserable. The photograph in the back shows a nice building, and the photograph on the right shows the destruction of that building, or at least another building that got bombed or was being dismantled. Anything in this world that looks, oh, wow, look at that nice building. Just before coming here, I was in the New Jersey area, and it's probably the same over here. Homes are decorated, it's many. Wow, they've got all these lights and this and that. It's really spectacular. And then it's over, just like the house on the left. Beautiful house, some of them decorated like anything, and then it's over. Then look at the one on the right. So the enjoyment, the objects and the so-called enjoyment, the nature of the place is it's anityam asukham. So don't take shelter there. In this material world, there is danger at every step. Padam, padam, yadvipadam. Again, Lord Brahma teaching in his prayers. Therefore, devotee has no other course than to take shelter of the Lord at every step. So whether you're trying to get to the spiritual world or you're in the spiritual world with Nanda, this is what we do. We take shelter. Here's a very nice explanation given by Jiva Goswami. In case you didn't recognize him, the image on the right, that's Nanda Maharaj. He, or Nanda, surrendered in his mind to Hari, he who destroys all fears, since Vishnu was the family deity for the auspiciousness of his son. So he wasn't just interested in his own well-being, he was interested because he's a pure devotee with Krishna as his son. He's interested in creating auspiciousness for his son. We had this really lengthy question-answer session about, this is just 6 days after Krishna's birth, but after Krishna, the day after Krishna's birth, Nandotsava, he gave charity like anything. And the reason for a Vaishnava to give charity is not karmakanda. He wanted auspiciousness for his son. Now, so that we had the discussion was, if you give in charity, you shouldn't want something. Otherwise, to the person asking the question, it sounds like karmakanda. You do something because you want something. But karmakanda is not exactly that. Very clear. There's other examples. Rather than going through all of that discussion, but there are many, many, many Vaishnavas, pure devotee Vaishnavas, that do something for others with the appeal to the Supreme Lord that benefits should go to others. And it's not like a selfless act makes it not karmakanda. It's the Supreme Lord is to be satisfied. And when the Supreme Lord is satisfied, that benefit should go to whoever one should go to. Let's just take, for example, our founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada, and the rocket fuel that was propelling him through his days of risking his life to come to the West and doing everything that he did, even after he arrived in success and success and success. What was driving him? The instruction of his spiritual master and a very profound kind of compassion. He didn't want people to suffer. Listen carefully, consider. Listen carefully to his classes with that ear. He wants that people not suffer. And And sometimes he would be gentle, and sometimes he would be heavy, and sometimes this. But the target was compassion, relieving people of suffering and bringing them to the place of no suffering. So Nanda Maharaj wanted auspiciousness to go to his son because he has parental affection. He shouldn't not want the welfare of his son. Parental affection, even in Krishna Loka, doesn't mean you're neutral toward the well-being of those that are dear to you. So it's the pleasure of Narayana for the benefit of his son. Jiva Goswami continues, or he's taking shelter because the information could not be false, what Vasudeva said. On the way back, he especially thought of his son. Most attractive, Harim, thinking, I do not know what news is there. He returned to his house. Sharanam. Now we're going to go on to the next verse. Nice graphics here. The first demoness, Putana. Here's text number 2. Kangsena prahita gora Putana bala gatini. She was a child killer. Bala gatini. While Nanda Maharaj was returning to Gokula, the same fierce Putana, whom Kamsa had previously engaged to kill babies, they were buddies. Kamsa was, even aside from Krishna, Kamsa was engaging her in killing babies. What a person. This is another reason why Krishna brought Putana, because he came, one of the many reasons, he came to this world at the appeal of the demigods to relieve Earth of the burden of demoniac personalities, specifically demoniac kings, but demoniac kings had bad people engaged with them. Putana was one of them. So it was fulfilling the promise of the demigods. That's another reason why he called her. So, the same fierce Putana, whom Kamsa had previously engaged to kill babies, was wandering about in the towns, cities, and villages, doing her nefarious duty. Pura Grama Vraja Adishu. Cities, towns, cities, and villages, doing her nefarious duties. Nice painting. There she is, or Putana. Entering into the whole of the Mathura district, cities, villages, and towns. Now we're going to go through some of the commentaries of our acharyas on what she was really up to. The first reference is going to come from Srinath Chakravarti. He, we mentioned yesterday evening, he wrote a commentary. He was a contemporary of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. We don't hear so much about him. However, if you want, you can do a word search in Prabhupada's writings, and he makes reference to Srinath Chakravarti's Chaitanya Mata Manjusa. That's the name of a commentary on the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, and particularly he liked Krishna's pastimes, the 10th canto. That's what he's known for. He was the spiritual master of Srila Kavi Karnapur, who we've heard much more often in ISKCON than we have of Srinath Chakravarti. And in this presentation, we're making references from time to time to Ananda Vrindavan Champu. We discussed it yesterday. Champu is a literary type of writing. And Ananda Vrindavan Champu is his writing about Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Very beautiful writing. We'll see as we go along. And there's many books, but another is Gaura Gunadesh Dipika. It's a who's who. In Gaura Lila, who are they in Krishna's pastimes? That's what Gaura Gunadesh Dipika. So he's a very deep, profound Kavi Karnapur personality, and his spiritual master was Srinath Chakravarti. Some of you will recognize this verse. This in his invocation or introduction to his commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. Aradyo Bhagavan Vrajesha Tanayas Tadama Vrindavanam Ramya Kadachit Upasana Vrajavadu Vargena Ya Kalpita. This third line we all will hear, Prema Pumarta Mahan. Prema Pumarta Mahan. This is Lord Chaitanya's Srimad Shastram Bhagavan Pramanam Amalam. There's another one. Bhagavatam is the Amala Pramana, the spotless Pramana. We spoke a little bit yesterday about Pramana. Means of knowing. It's the Amala Pramana, according to this celebrated verse. And Lord Chaitanya taught, Prema Pum Arta Mahan. This is the real mature fruit of Arta. Prema is the goal. So Srinath is the author of that celebrated verse, and in his commentary on the Putana Lila, he writes that actually Putana didn't kill any children, but she was searching for children. Because who wants to hear that? I mean, I recall reading this the first several times. In Krishna's Lila, little children have to be killed because Putana is going to come. It's like too painful. So he didn't like it. He just said no children were killed. She was searching. And Jiva Goswami comments that there were some children killed, but they were only children connected with Kamsa. Because the very next verse, verse 3, Shukadeva Goswami recognizes Maharaj Parikshit is also very sensitive. You know, elevated souls are not callous. They're very sensitive. So hearing the Putana is coming to kill children, right in the middle of hearing Krishna's pastimes, is like, it hurts. At the heart level, it hurts. So some acharyas are commenting in different ways. Here's Jiva Goswami's comment. This verse tells the news of Vraja. Though previously his ministers persuaded him to afflict the sages, fearful Kamsa agreed that Putana should go to kill the infants as a simultaneous method of safety before harassing the sages. There was when this news came from that Krishna had been born, the eighth child of Devaki had been born, because that's what we heard yesterday. That's what Yogamaya, in the form of Durga, informed Kamsa. So he's got to retaliate. This eighth child is going to kill me, so I have to kill him first. He goes on. she was the first engaged. She was the first demon sent by Kamsa because she was ferocious in killing infants. It was like her thing. She killed them completely by giving them her poisoned breast. They died immediately. And Jiva Goswami is making this comment based upon what's found in Vishnu Purana, which says, in a moment, Putana killed any child to whom she offered her breast. The poison was very intense. There's different kinds of poison, apparently. And she was a connoisseur of poisons. And whoever she touched was killed immediately. It's described further in Vishnu Purana that it was like her thing. She would go in the darkness of the night into homes when families were asleep and their child was asleep, and she'd sneak into the room where the little child was. She'd pick up the child and begin feeding the child and kill them immediately. Pretty nasty lady. Here's a little interesting description found in an article from Back to Godhead. I'll just read. She was considered a witch. We'll hear the next verse also. The word is translated as witch. Such witches can play their black art only where there is no chanting or hearing of the holy name of Krishna. It is said that whenever the chanting of the holy name of Krishna is done, even negligently, all bad elements, witches, ghosts, and dangerous calamities immediately disappear. And this is certainly true of the place where the chanting of the holy name of Krishna is done seriously, especially in Vrindavan, when the Supreme Lord was personally present. Therefore, the doubts of Nanda Maharaj were certainly based on affection for Krishna. You get the logic. She's bad, but she can't have an effect in Vrindavan, and so it's not that she could actually do any harm to Krishna, but it's just exclusively his parental affection. Even aside from his divinity as the personality of Godhead, but the chanting of the holy name and calling Krishna's name again and again, and they're in the holy dham, there has nothing to fear, but he's feeling fear for one reason: parental affection. Transcendental parental affection. Actually, there was no danger from the activities of Putana, despite her powers. Such witches are called ketchari, which means they can fly in the sky. In witch stories, it's not at all uncommon. When I was growing up as a kid, witches were shown as flying on broomsticks. Did you have that in India? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Yes? Sometimes. Okay. I mean, even in the West, it's like witch stories was, with Harry Potter now, it's like all over the place. This black art, because Prabhupada spoke about it in a lecture. He said there even today, there's some places in northern India where there are persons that know these black arts and they can fly around on broomsticks or branches of trees. This black art of witchcraft is still practiced by some women in the remote northwestern side of India. There it is. They can transfer themselves from one place to another on the branch of an uprooted tree. Putana knew this witchcraft, and therefore she is described in the Bhagavatam as Ketchari. There's a nice painting of she's uprooting some trees so she can go flying around. Now, we're going to touch on one more topic that was going around in ISKCON. I was one of the ones that was stirring the topic. And that is, why is it? Is there some reason? The answer is yes. Is there some reason why the first demon killed by Krishna and by Ram, This is Ram killing Tataka. With next to him is his dear brother Lakshmana, and in that other cloth, that's Vishvamitra Muni. So Krishna's first demon was Putana, and Ram's first demon killed was Tataka. So is there some significance? And researchers didn't have an answer. Finally, Hari Parshad Prabhu came up with an answer from Hari Shuri's commentary. And there was two different answers. That one that came at that time, with the indication was this, that according to Hari Shuri, material desire, one of the words for a material desire is asha. And asha is, in gender, it's feminine, and material desire is the principal object or obstacle for those that want to progress spiritually, to overcome material desire, or asha. Mogasha, moga karma, no, moga jnana vichetasaha. Asha, material desire. So therefore the first demon was a woman, representing killing of material desire, asha. And then more recently, he has a second explanation. In this verse of Hari Shuri, it's a play on the word Gokula. With the case of Putana, the killing of Putana represents, Gokula has two different meanings, just like we heard yesterday evening. There could be two different meanings of Putana, etymology speaking. So Gokula is Gokula, the place of cows, Krishna's abode, Gokula. But Go can also mean senses, and Kula can also mean network or family, or the network of senses. So the obstacle of material life is the network of senses, and the senses are attracted commonly to the beauty of the opposite sex. For men, it's a woman, or for wealth or gold. And so when Putana came, she was dressed so lavishly, we'll hear, and her form was such that they were wondering who she is. Is she the goddess of fortune, and so forth? We'll hear those explanations. But a very beautiful painting in the background. There's this demoniac feature of Putana being concealed by the beauty and golden ornaments and decorations that she was adorned with, that permitted all the residents of Vrindavan to speculate who she was, and particularly Yasoda and Rohini, to just let her pass by and enter right into where Krishna was, because they were just amazed at her beauty and her motherly affection. So we're at 8:21, and we covered two verses. That was nice. And I'm not going to try to speed. I'm going to try to go slowly and discuss things thoroughly. And we'll go as long as it is required to complete this whole section. We may not finish within, the Thanksgiving weekend. Let's see what happens. But that's the seminar on the Putana Lila thus far. So let's see if there's some discussion. We have some minutes remaining.
Hare Krishna. We hear that sages are very powerful. In case of King Vena, they just by their curse they killed him. And during Krishna's pastimes, how come we never hear about the sages powerful or their power? And every time when we hear or the demon is coming, only Krishna is able to come and kill the demon, and we don't hear anything about the sages. I was just wondering, during Krishna's pastimes, were the sages were present or?
Yes. Here's a little detail. The sages were present. Chief amongst them was Bhaguri Muni. Bhaguri Muni was, if my memory is correct, is the son of Garga Muni. Bhaguri Muni. He was a priest that, if you recall, when the pastime of Krishna's tax pastime, Dan Kali Kamudi, when Krishna was stopping the gopis because they were bringing dairy products, ghee and everything to go to the yajna that Bhagri Muni was performing. It was organized by Vasudeva near Govindakund. So they were walking along the side of Govardhan Hill to get to that place where Bhagri Muni was doing his yajna, and other priests. So regularly, Bhagri Muni was doing, and he was very, very qualified, and they had very high regard for him. So, back to your, we're there, yes. Then why don't we find that they did things to stop the demons, instead of why it's always Krishna instead of the sages? Well, just like this painting here, Vishwamitra Muni, he also had power to kill anybody or do anything, create the whole second, universe. Like, he was as powerful as Brahma. But he didn't want to use his Brahminical power in that way. He deferred to Ram doing. So sages, that's not their ordinary business, is to kill bad people. It can be done, but they defer to the Kshatriyas to do that. And the second reason is, this is Krishna's pastimes. He's at the center of the stage with the spotlight on him. So they're doing other things that assist his pastimes, because he's come to kill the demons, among other things, at the request of the demigods. Now, he could have the demons killed by someone else doing, but he's doing himself. That's the pastime. He's come, he's doing himself. And the demons were very, very powerful. Not to say the sages didn't have superior power. Sages have superior power. But Kshatriya business.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Something that came up a couple of times today is about the impersonal tendency, thinking sometimes like very advanced. I mean, I'm talking about something that bothers me actually. So sometimes younger devotees, or even others, times, but the way they deal with older devotees is like as if they don't have feelings.
As if the older devotees don't, because they're transcendental.
Yeah, because they're transcendental. And it pains me, it bothers me.
It's a lack of culture, and it's an impersonal tendency.
Yeah. And so I guess my question is just that, what are some ways that we can teach that, or
A few ideas come to mind in response to your question. One is, of course, modeling, being the role model of what culture is. Another is those that are teachers to point this out, I mean, not like with a hammer, but point it out repeatedly, that just see, this is culture, just see, this is culture, just see, this is culture. And by sound, as well as by example, sound can gradually, oh, that's what culture means. Now, I know other devotees that are very irritated by the same point. And some of them are younger and some of them are older. And it's not just that they're grumpy, it's just they're understanding that there's a lack or a weakness, a paucity of culture or maturity, because cultured persons are very sensitive. So, as I mentioned it yesterday, when Mananda went to Mathura to pay his taxes, read that section and you'll find such affection and such culture. It wasn't cosmetic. It's the nature of an elevated person. So when we're not elevated, naturally we're going to do non-elevated things because we're not elevated. So in one sense, one needs to be tolerant. But your question is not just how can I be tolerant of something that irritates me. It's how can we bring the culture up. Something that doesn't really help is stewing about it. So that is to say, when messages are spoken, the message needs to be spoken in a way that touches the heart of the person that needs to hear. And even if they don't hear, and they don't hear, and they don't hear, and they don't hear, and they don't hear, you continue teaching. I mean, I'm looking at a nice photograph of Srila Prabhupada over here, and what he saw was, an even grosser form of what you're describing. And what did he do? He stood in line for the shower. And, like that nice example when he was in Detroit and they made this monstrous Vyasa-san and he sat down because he knew people would be envious he didn't sit on Vyasa-san, although at other times he would say, no, they should have brought a golden car. So depending upon circumstance, one can teach by example and by words according to time, place, circumstance, and be very consistent. And a final thing is, it would be nice, wishful thinking, but with wishful thinking, it would be nice if from time to time, this took place in Radhadesh. There was a gathering of the European leaders in Radhadesh, and they came up with this idea that all of the speakers in Europe, and if possible, all the speakers in the world, could for 1 year speak on Shikshashtaka 3. So I thought that was fantastic, and I did it for a year, whenever the opportunity arose. So if there was some idea that the leadership in North America bought into, it can be the world, or some other geographic area, and here's some ideas. Here's a little brainstorming set of messages and sub-messages and complementary messages that can emphasize. And if there's some buy-in, then it's a message that people hear for a whole year. Because sound is a way to change character and culture. Prabhupada did it. and single-handedly. And some persons were dense and it didn't go in. But, to some degree it went in. So by sound. And systematic and organized is another, take it to another level.
There's a question from Snehavalli. It's from yesterday's class. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. In Prahlad Maharaj's prayers, we discussed that Prahlad Maharaj asked for the deliverance of his father,
Yes.
Hiranyakashipu.
Yes.
And Lord Narasimhadev says that 21 generations have already been liberated. How can we understand that liberation when you said that only when Krishna kills the demons are liberated? Thank you.
That's a very astute observation. One possible answer is the answer that Prabhupada gave to the following question. And I think it was in relation to Brahmananda, where Brahmananda and Gargamuni were brothers, which means they had the same mother, and that her mother would be liberated, and they were asking, what does that mean? And it means that she'll have the opportunity to engage in devotional service in her next life. So there are different meanings of what liberation might indicate or infer. But nice going, Snehavalli. Really, really good. Very, very, very precise. You're very thoughtful. It must mean there's some other kind of connotation to liberation, because if I remember, I'll send Snehavalli, I'll send you the, it's 3 hours earlier in Seattle, so she's not attending this morning's class, I don't think. But I'll send her those same... She is right now?
Yeah, she
Wow. Wow, 5:30 in the morning. Okay. I'll send you those same documents that I sent to Ranga Devi yesterday, so you can take a look at the scriptural authority that says those killed by Vishnu are not liberated. That was the Kalanemi question yesterday. So it must mean some other kind of liberation that's being referred to in that statement by Lord Nrsimhadev to Prahlad. But nice catch. Go ahead, next. You want to add something?
No, my understanding of that liberation, it's not like the impersonal liberation, but the opportunity for that liberation is there, meaning that...
Opportunity for devotional service.
Yeah.
That's what Prabhupada said. Yeah.
From Radhaduti, Krishna Maharaj, not sure if this is already answered. How is it that Putana was able to kill the Rajavasi children when they were in the land of Raja in the homes of Rajavasis?
According to Jiva Goswami, she didn't. And then the scriptural reference is given because of the reasons that she's already indicated. She was searching, but she didn't. That's at least one explanation. Okay.
Next question from Chaitanya Rasa Prabhu. Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, we understand Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj are Nityasiddhas. What tattva do they belong to?
Shakti tattva.
Next question, Hemnad. Hare Krishna Maharaj, sound in the form of holy name delivers a jiva from material world. All the work and transactions here usually done start with sound. What's the importance of sound in spiritual world, Maharaj?
It's part of the spiritual world. There's sound here because there's sound there, and the sound there is part of the spiritual world. There, and the sounds are all spiritual. There's no other kind of sound. It's sustaining and supporting and nourishing the spiritual world and the spiritual atmosphere.
From Radha, Pune's daughter. How to understand Narad Muni instigating Kamsa to kill when Kamsa was okay to not kill the sons of Devaki initially?
Twice Narada visited Kamsa, and in both cases, Narada's understanding of those souls that Kamsa did kill, or our understanding of those souls that Kamsa did kill, it was foretold that they would be killed, and so it's just fulfilling an utterance. And Narada, was moving the pastime of Krishna along in the second visit as well. Like, there's all this discussion, commentary, where Vasudeva and Devaki were put into prison after his second visit, and saying, the eighth child is already over there, and so, he's going to get you, so you better watch your backside, and make a good plan. And he even suggested a good plan. So putting Vasudeva and Devaki in prison and having the children killed, it was to instigate the purpose of Krishna's. He was facilitating and instigating the purpose of Krishna's appearance, and to hasten those pastimes, as well as this other reason. They were going to be killed anyways, so there's no stain or no sin or no wrongdoing on Narada's part to do like that.
And Snehamali has a second question or point. In Bhagavatam 7:10-22, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that Hiranyakashipu went to heavenly planets after being killed by Narasimhadev.
Wow.
Does this answer that concern that where Hiranyakashipu was in between a long time period of yugas?
Fantastic. You're a careful reader. I've been searching for that for a long time. And I'll go, after class, I'll go examine what Vishwanath says. 7:10-22.
Rupa Vinod Mataji from Nepal was just thinking, if you get killed by Krishna, you get liberated, which means, is it good to be bad on purpose to be killed by him?
No. That kind of liberation those killed by Krishna achieved is thought of by a devotee as like hell. Because there's no service to Krishna. Horrible. So the devotees don't want. And besides, bhakti doesn't mean do bad stuff so you get liberated. The bhakta is thinking, let me act in such a way that Krishna is pleased. Okay. There's more to it than that, but that's...
From Lila Prabhu, is it possible to elaborate on the topic of charity? When devotees perform charity, what should our consciousness be so that it's not done in the mode of karma kanda expectations? How can it be performed in the mood to please Krishna, but without expectations of some return?
Without expectations of?
Some return.
Well, it's the nature of duty. There's sakam and nishkam. And so what's the difference between sakam and nishkam? Activity. Krishna is to be pleased. And sakam is, I get something, and Krishna is to be pleased. So the distinction, I mean, he's asking what's the difference, or the procedure is you start with where you are, and you strive to go to where you want to get, the goal that you wish to attain. And we strive to attain Shuddha Bhakti, and by striving to attain Shuddha Bhakti, the what will I get out of this mentality can become cleansed by the strength of Krishna should be pleased. By the Bhakti principle, contaminations can be removed. There's power in the Bhakti principle. So not just give in charity, but cultivate the consciousness in all that you do, that Krishna is to be pleased. And then you'll get beyond the karma kanda type, or the what's in it for me consciousness. Cultivation of the Bhakti principle will take you to the other side. Don't stop giving charity because there's something, what's in it for me consciousness. Continue to be charitable.
There's a comment from Sundari Lila from Naperville. I could realize how powerful Kamsa is to empower demons for bad acts. Lord Krishna is more powerful to counteract his acts.
Yes.
Could understand more Lord Krishna's supremacy. Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah. Very good. Very good.
From Shri Radhika. There are some demons of Vrindavan that use deception. Others are more forthright about their intentions. Does Krishna make a distinction in the fate of the demon based on this distinction? There's a part 2.
Well, before you go to part 2. Well, Krishna's discerning, obviously. So distinction through discernment. And does his interaction with them differ because of that discernment? I think is what she's asking. So trying to think of some nice examples. I'm thinking, in response to her question, I'm thinking of the nature of Krishna's mercy can be compared to the shining of the sun, and whether there's clouds in the sky or no clouds in the sky, the shining of the sun is equal. But what the person who is looking at the sun when there's no clouds or there's clouds, the experience of the subjective experience of the recipient may be different. Like, for example, here's an example. 2 examples. The words that Krishna spoke when he interacted with the washerman in Sanskrit is almost identical with the words that Krishna spoke to the weaver. It would be very pious of you if you... And you know, the response was different. And because the response of the washerman was what it was, Krishna did what Krishna did. Because the weaver's response was what the weaver's response, Krishna did what he did. So his mercy, like the shining of the sun, is equal everywhere. Or another similar example is when the wives of the Brahmanas came with food for the cowherd boys, the words that Krishna spoke to them is almost identical of what Krishna spoke to the gopis when they came for rasa dance. Now, their affection for Krishna was not the same, but was not cloudy. And so their response, there wasn't a rasa dance that followed, but their response was very similar to the gopis. They hung out. They wanted. He was indicating they should go back home. They didn't want to go back home. They just stood shyly and looking at Krishna. So the difference is how things are processed inside. Now it doesn't exactly correspond with her question, because some people are duplicitous and deceptive, and some people are not. You know, the washerman wasn't at all deceptive. He was a washerman. He was a servant of Kamsa. And I can't think of an example that's explicitly how Krishna may have reacted differently to someone who is duplicitous versus someone who is not. Nothing coming to mind. Anything? Okay. Second question.
Part 2 of the saying is, personally in my life, deception is harder to take than outright negativity received from another. Will you kindly comment?
It sounds like the cloud is darker when there's not only negativity, but there's deception on top of the negativity. Or let's say it's the same thing in a different way. As far as the 4 pillars of religiosity, truthfulness is the one that's remaining but wobbly. And when that's gone, everything collapses. That's it?
No, there's more.
Okay.
Radha Kunjabihari Prabhu from Naperville. I'm struggling to understand the following 2 points. Please help me. Number 1. How come so many demons like Kamsa, Putana, Shishupal were born in the other dynasty?
Why not? The way of, for Shishupal, it's part of Krishna's pastimes, and the way in which Kamsa was born is very unpleasant. Ugrasena was married to Padmavati, and on the evening of their marriage, a demon dressed himself up as Ugrasena and had intercourse with Padmavati, and the result of that intercourse was Kamsa. Now, because she didn't know her husband, she hadn't been dating Ugrasena. It just was one of those marriages, and so she didn't recognize the difference. But anyway, so how he was produced within the Yadu dynasty was pretty unusual. how bad people are born in an exalted dynasty can happen by Krishna's arrangement, and there's other circumstances where elevated persons are born in bad dynasties or vice versa. So there may be rule and exceptions to the rule, but for Krishna's pastime purposes, they're in his association for some reason, for their purification and upliftment and so forth.
And question 2 is, if demons like Putana were able to locate Krishna, what prevented Kamsa from going directly to Krishna?
Oh, he was engaging others. Big people like to engage other people.
Sanchari, Guru Maharaj, in thinking about how Narada played a role in moving Krishna's pastime and in understanding the bigger picture is pleasing Krishna, it reminds me of viewing all situations in life as the will of Krishna, which means that whatever is happening is in the best interest of the soul. Theoretically, I get it, but when it comes to practical action, my perspective on any situation, whether good or bad, is narrow. How do we cultivate a broad spiritual vision that allows us to see everything happening in life as a step closer to pleasing Krishna in full?
Well, it's an opportunity. Krishna's sanction of something and Krishna's willing of something are different. Let's just take, because it's pervasive, as pandemic. So many people, the world is being affected. And it's horrible how the world is being affected. And so how to look at this horrible thing, just like, there's different ways of looking at it, but a way to look at it is, what's the lesson that we are to understand, and how are we to behave towards others during this pandemic period and on the other side of it. Now, some persons are going to get it, and at least get closer to the Krishna conscious dynamic of life, and some persons are just going to be, dead or be defensive or finger pointing, something. So Krishna's sanction doesn't mean necessarily the all-around good betterment, especially when there isn't acknowledgement of the spiritual shelter alternative. So we, you, devotees, or you as a devotee, can understand take the circumstance and see, here is an opportunity for cultivation or furthering of Krishna consciousness. When you have that spirit in your heart, you'll see things differently. And you use the pandemic example, but whatever the example might be, whatever the event might be, when you're fixed, you become fixed in the cultivation of Krishna consciousness, you'll see things differently. How to take each step as a step. And then when you're taking that step, you'll see differently. Krishna will give you that intelligence.
Priyanka Chaudhary writes an example of deception when Duryodhana came to Krishna to ask for his army.
Well, it was pretty direct. And Krishna knew, and Krishna was okay.
Tharani Radha. Guru Maharaj, Sukadev Goswami was attracted to Krishna when he heard this pastime of Putana. There are other pastimes like Kalya not being killed by Krishna. But this Putana story melted his heart. What's the speciality meaning about this, Guru Maharaj?
Well, they're different persons. Kali was delivered but not killed. And the dancing on the hoods of the Kaliya serpent smashed his hoods to beyond recognition. But then the serpent upon which Krishna placed his left foot that was swallowing Nanda Maharaj, it just took touching his foot, and he was the heavenly resident was Vidyadhara was immediately delivered. So, different situation for different entities depending upon their orientation, degree of covering, and contamination, and so forth. But it doesn't change the intention, the compassionate intention of Krishna to deliver. I'm not sure I've answered the question, because I'm not really sure I've understood the question. If I haven't answered, the person can send it again.
And this is again Radha Kunja Bihari. It was a profound wish to suckle the Lord that gave Putana the opportunity to serve the Lord. Do our wishes to engage with the Lord in various services have the same effect?
I think it depends. Depends on your qualification. Depends. So the same is the question. Same effect? Depends. Depends on your qualification.
And I think it's the last question from Premavardhan Prabhu. In Bhagavad Gita 4.10, last line, it says, Puta madbhavamagataha. Is there a connection with this Puta translated as being purified with Putana attaining Goloka?
Only in terms of the Sanskrit root, the dhatu, not necessarily in personalities. Okay.
As Attorney Radha's clarification to her question is, why was Sukadeva Swami attracted to this pastime in particular?
Well, I think he's not attracted to this pastime in particular. I think he's attracted to Krishna. And any of Krishna's pastimes, he gets ecstatic about it. Is that right?
My understanding is that maybe, because I don't recall that Vyasadev's disciples recite the whole pastime. They recite a few verses when they're up there. And then Sukadeva Goswami gets attracted to this Avabhakya Vistanakala Kutam verse, and this other verse, Varhabhita.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's what she's referring to. Oh, okay. I thought, okay.
so
Okay. Vyasadeva selected those verses. It's not that those are his favorite verses or a favorite pastime or something.
yeah, or that Vyasadev's disciples were just chanting some verses and he got attracted to it.
Yeah, because he's attracted to Krishna. Okay, we're out of time. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.